Good afternoon to everybody. I hope that you're still awake. This is an unholy hour to make the presentation because after hearty lunch, people tend to get sleepy. Basically, my presentation will probably be shorter than 10 minutes because I only have 4 slides, mindful of the time that was given to us. Basically, the first slide talks about, since we're talking about emergencies, identify the type of emergencies we are facing in this world, which is becoming a norm rather than an exception, emergency into here. And there are 2 types of emergencies that we are thinking of. One is the natural, which was discussed by the preceding speaker, and these are natural emergencies resulting from earthquakes, typhoons, flooding, tsunamis, etc., etc. The other one, which has become an important source of emergency situation, is what we call man-made emergency situation. These are basically armed conflict. And you will notice that there is an increasing trend towards armed violence in the world. In fact, there are 2 types of armed violence that we took note. One is what we call interstate conflict, wherein it involves countries or 2 countries in the. Sorry to be pedantic about it, I'd just like to explain it a little bit. 2 countries involved, but increasingly we are seeing what we call interstate conflict, which is basically civil war. And within the civil war, we have 2 categories again. We have an intrastate conflict that affects the entire nation. Like, for example, you've seen in Libya right now. And there's what we call now subnational conflict. And these are basically conflict that happens in regions. For example, in my country, it's in Mindanao. In Thailand, it's southern Thailand. In Sri Lanka, it's northern Sri Lanka, etc., etc. So that's what we call intrastate conflict. The thing is that man-made conflict or emergency situation arising from man-made conflict is a more challenging task because it does not only lead to destruction of human lives and properties, it leads to the destruction of institutions, which are basically mandated to provide the services. It presents a formidable task because your institutions are not working, and that's the reason why in some African countries, the UN calls it or refers it as complex emergency, because you do not only face human disaster or emergency situation, you also face the problem of rebuilding institutions that would be able to hold the people and govern the country. But despite the difference, there are patterns to the rebuilding process. And we have identified 3 stages of the rebuilding process. How do you go? Page down. There. This is actually sequence. And the first outset of the engagement in a conflict, in an emergency situation is that what we call humanitarian stage. It's basically involving saving lives of those people who were affected by the emergency situation. That's the reason why you emphasize provision of basic services like food, a little bit of shelter, drinking water, etc., etc. That's the first phase. That will last, hopefully, 1 to 2 years. The second stage is what you want. Basically, you want to bring normalcy to the life of the community, and this is what we call rehabilitation and reconstruction stage. You normally bring people to their communities of origin, or if they don't like to go back to their communities of origin, as in conflict situation because of issue over security, you have to resettle them in other parts of the place, whether it's a province, whatever it is. That's this, and once you've done that, once they have resettled in those communities or went back to their community of origins, it's normally, this is a standard operating procedures of donor agencies. You conduct a rapid assessment. What do they need? Do they core shelters, more facilities, like education, health facilities, etc., etc. That becomes the basis of the delivery of aid assistance by international donor communities and by the government itself. The third one is once you have established the needs of the community, it normally agriculture, because most of them are predominantly agriculture, has a predominantly agricultural economy. You focus on assistance in terms of agricultural livelihood projects. That's where there's subsidies that you provide to the communities in the form of distribution of seeds, planting materials, fingerlings, animal for work, etc., etc. You focus on that kind of thing. Once you're able to establish that, you can complement it, as the preceding speaker said, you complement that with some cash transfer. Normally, this is where the safeguards of the conditional cash transfer come in. And it is normally followed by some form of organization of the community, because you want to build unity, because you want to build collective action within the community. It is normally followed by a community-driven development, where the focus is the establishment of community facilities like schools, buildings, health centers, etc., through active participation of the community. That's in Indonesia, it's the KDP. In the Philippines, it's the Kalaisid, where you mobilize the community to undertake a certain projects by their choosing, and basically manage the funds for that project. And eventually, we normally conduct labor market survey so that we can determine what kind of skills are being demanded in the market, and secondly, what kind of training program that will fit the market, at the same time provide some financial assistance through microcredit. I think the biggest challenge is really number 3. It's promoting sustained growth and development. And this is also where we come to grief in terms of our community-driven development program, because we cannot seem to connect the small-scale type of economic activities undertaken by the community and link it towards greater economic activities that will provide sustained income, sustained jobs to those affected by the emergency situation. I'm sorry.
2 minutes more.
Okay, basically, let's just go to lessons learned. We found out that this is very critical, one, to seek during emergency situation, to seek the assistance of international aid agencies, because they have the knowledge and logistics, like, for example, the World Food Program, Oxfam, etc., etc. Second is that you have to strengthen the central government in charge to deliver social services, because you have to have a command, one center that will be able to mobilize different agencies towards that purpose. The third is because emergency situation is by nature on-site, site-specific. The requirements are site-specific, including your climate change. You need to capacitate or build the strength of local government and coordinate with them. Fourth, I think one of the best way of mobilizing the community is through participatory development, and CDD can do that. And finally, you want to avoid conflict, so you have to make the process as transparent as possible, and make the officials accountable. Otherwise, you're going to breed more conflict and breed more disaster into the community. Thank you very much.